School Board of Education, please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Mitchell. Trustee Patterson.
Present.
Trustee Williams.
Here.
Trustee McOwen.
Present.
Trustee Ning. Trustee Saunders.
Here.
Trustee White. Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee Torres.
Present.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Do we have any communications from the public this evening?
Good evening. The Mount Vernon Board of Education recognizes the critical importance of community discourse and the involvement in the education of Mount Vernon's children, and accordingly, members of the public are invited to speak at each regularly scheduled board meeting, subject to the terms and conditions of board policy. Speakers must register in advance no later than 4 p.m. on the date of the meeting by contacting myself, the district clerk, in person at 165 North Columbus Avenue, by phone at 914-665-5235, or via email at rmccormack@mtvernoncsd.org. The board welcomes all respectful comment, whether praise or criticism. However, identifying and criticizing a specific student, parent, teacher, administrator, or other Mount Vernon education official or employee is strictly prohibited. Such complaints must be presented and addressed through the proper administrative channels. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes to speak, with up to an additional minute to be used for the speaker to summarize and conclude their remarks. If appropriate, board trustees and/or the superintendent of schools may respond to a speaker's remarks at the conclusion of the public comment period. Our first speaker this evening is Gerald Dennis.
May I distribute something first to the board?
Yes.
I'll accept them. Steve, the agenda.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got it.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Gerald. Can you hear me? My name is Gerald Dennis. I'm the founder and executive director for the Northeast STEM Starter Academy. Have you heard of us yet? We are about STEM, Northeast STEM Academy. We started in August of 2014. It was our first class. Class delivered to 27 seventh graders at the time. The class included genomics, it included robotics, it included forensics, it included experimental science, and included a class on physics. It was 2 weeks long, from 8 to 3:30, included breakfast and lunch as well. And we had a fantastic time. Those seventh graders are now graduated 1 year out. We'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. Over the last 6 years, we've delivered in excess of 60 separate programs, after school, summer school, weekend programs. We've encountered 2,000 students in that 6-year period of time. We've delivered those classes through colleges, educators from Lehman College, Pace University, Cornell University, Mercy College as well. Our educators, all of our classes taught by educators from college. 80% of them, we have 20% high school educators who we know are successful educators. They do delivery as well. During this time that we've partnered with those educators, during this time we've partnered with those educators, institutions, so really delivered a lot of different classes on all different topics, including in the STEM subject matter. We are very pleased with ourselves so far, but there's a lot left to be done. Over the last 6 years, we've extended $487,000 to cover the cost of all of our classes. We have not taken a dime from any student. neither from the Board of Education. It's all been funded through our very supportive environment, including corporations that are quite extensive. We'll talk about in a few minutes as well. To highlight our programs, I think there are 2 or 3 programs I want to mention. Again, in August 2014, I thought I turned that off. I apologize. August 2014, we delivered a 2-week program, 27 students, subject just covered. In August 2019, we delivered a class for 160 students. It would have been more, but we had some communication challenges in terms of distributing information throughout the community. We did 160 from 3rd grade through 11th grade. For the second year in a row, we had 12 seniors that were in our program previously that were class assistants and were paid $300 for the 2 weeks as well. That has been the highlight, that summer program. But during school, we've delivered 6 different programs, pointing out 2 of them particularly, though, I think have been very exciting. One program we started with the kids in the 4th grade. 2 of the parents are here from that 4th grade class, and they've been going with us every year since then. They've been learning a lot of different things, including we meet on Tuesday after school, Thursday after school, and on Saturdays. On Saturdays, we do robotics and our coding, or things like Raspberry Pi, et cetera. And on Tuesdays, we do mathematics. We also focus heavily on financials. We also focus heavily on science-based science learning as well as technology. For that class, we have a group of great students. What we did this year for the first year, we want to really focus heavily, though, on financial management. Obviously, in our community, though, that's a real critical need, and that need is represented in terms of challenges we have both early on and later in life. What we do there is focus on challenging, managing funds. And to help them do that, though, this year, 25 kids in our class, the majority of them got from us start of a passbook account in PCSB Bank here in Westchester, in Mount Vernon particularly. We gave them $25 per student. And every year they come back, they'll get another $25. But every year, though, the student with the highest money in their deposit account will double that money up to $200 per student, 2 or 2 students. Our key is to help them understand the value of savings by making it real time. And it's been very successful. I'm sure it'll be as well going forward. Our other program of note is a financial program. It's a program for a 10th, 11th grade aviation program. This is our 4th year of that class. It's a 6-week Saturday class. It's taught, one section is technology, one section is aviation. The kids learn all about flying. We visit Westchester Airport, we do some flying, we check out large planes, things of that nature. And the pilot teaches them everything you can imagine about flying, particularly in terms of all the things from basic flying to extensive flying. And every class ends with a test. You had 20, 25 kids, 10th, 11th graders. Last year, the 2 students with the highest test performance received a $10,000 scholarship from us to get their pilot's license. They're in the midst of doing that now. Victoria Gomez, who you may all know, she was the valedictorian at Mount Vernon High School last year. She's in her 30th flight lesson, as well as Victor Ornaz is also in his 20th flight lesson as well. We know there's a huge opportunity, though, for minorities in aviation. And so to make that real, we provide them with the resources to get their pilot's license. This year we'll announce in March we'll announce the 2nd-year winners for that same program. Again, they'll both receive $10,000 from us to get their pilot's license. Finally, my time is almost up here.
Your time is actually up,
Okay.
Mr. Dennis, so if you can just wrap up quickly. You've actually exceeded the 4 minutes, but I'll let you wrap up.
All right, thank you very much then. Just to wrap things up, where we are now, looking at getting a building in the next few months. This year particularly, though, we'll have a Queens-like Science Center, New York Science Center. That's our goal and objective, though, to have an array of school classes, classrooms there, as well as a physical laboratory, planetarium, aviation planetary, aviation environment, things of that nature, though. That's our plan. But we really want to emphasize today, though, is we need to be more involved with the Board of Education before we can deliver content, both at the school level as well as teacher level as well. We have the educators, we have the performance background, we have the credibility to do that, though. So hopefully we'll be considered for those types of endeavors in the very near term. That's our request. Again, I thank you for the 3, 4, 5 minutes. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Dennis, for coming this evening. Thank you for your comments.
Our next speaker is Lowell Robinson. I can close public comment.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda will be the superintendent's. Dr. Ham. Are we going to do the superintendent first? How long is it going to be? Excuse us. Okay. So we're going to shift our agenda around this evening a little bit. We're going to have item number 4.1 next, which is the auditor's report. So I invite our auditor to please approach the podium and make your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is okay. My name is Scott Oling. I think there's oh, there we go. I think we're good. Yeah, I'm too tall. Thank you. My name is Scott Oling. I'm a partner with the firm of PKF O'Connor Davies. I'm accompanied tonight by Mark Callanan, who was the manager in charge of the audit that we performed for the school district. And I'm here tonight to give you, in summary form, the results of that audit that we conducted for the school for the year ended June 30, 2019. We went over this report in detail with members of the school district's audit committee about 2 weeks ago. So tonight is more of just an overview of the results of that meeting and the results of the district's finances for June 30, 2019. So the first slide that I have here is I always like to just kind of explain that basically a school district really does undergo a lot of external review by different groups. It's probably the most scrutinized operation in New York State, all the school districts in New York. Pretty much all the school districts in New York are required to have essentially 3 kinds of auditors involved with them and involved in their finances. You hire an internal auditor to do and look at some of your processes in particular, like a specific item or two every year, whether it's payroll, whether it's claims paying, whether it's looking at overtime, whether it's looking at extra classroom. That's what you engage an internal auditor to do, to look at those processes and make sure that they're functioning as they're supposed to. You also are required to have a claims auditor, which here happens pretty much on a weekly basis, to review all the bills that the district is going to pay and make sure that all the documentation is sufficient and appropriate to pay those bills. And then you have what we are here to talk to you about tonight. We are the external auditor, so our job is to help you produce your annual financial statement that you submit to the state education department, state controller's office. It's used by the rating agencies like Moody's and S&P. It's used to determine you're going through a lot of bond issuances right now, and so the information goes to those entities as well. Next slide. Our responsibility in doing that external audit basically is we have to perform your audit in accordance with what's known as generally accepted auditing standards, or GAS. And we have to design what we do on the audit to ensure that the financial statements that we're going to talk about, the numbers, are really free of what is known as material misstatement, that these statements really represent what happened in the district financially for the year. We also provide you a written communication of any deficiencies that we happen to find in the financial statements. And for this audit, we only identified the lowest level of deficiencies, known as control deficiencies. We didn't identify stuff that we would classify in higher categories. We have to, be involved in advising you to make sure you are using the proper accounting treatment for the various items that are required in a financial statement. And of course, we are required, should it come across our audit as we are performing the audit, to communicate if we come across any fraud or illegal acts. And we are mandated to report any of those to the board, and I'm happy to say we did not come across any of that during the audit. Continuing on the next slide. Other communications that we do provide you, and you've received already in our previous packet, the audit report is known, the audit opinion on the audit report is what's known as an unmodified opinion, or a clean opinion on the district's finances, meaning that we believe the financial statements that we're about to go over some of the numbers on fairly present what happened here in the district this year. We review, again, not to the level that the internal auditor reviews, but we have to review your internal control processes and procedures to make sure that the systems in place are reliable enough to generate the financial information that we're reporting on tonight. There are a lot of estimates and judgments contained in financial statements, we have to review those estimates and make sure they're reasonable. So you can't, just estimate, extra millions of dollars of state aid that doesn't exist. We have to make sure all estimates are reasonable. We did not have any significant or really any audit adjustments, which is a testament to Ken Silver and Saji Zachariah, the work they do. We really don't find any adjustments really necessary to the books and records here. We encountered no significant difficulties in doing the audit. We'd have to report to you if we did. We didn't have any disagreements in the discussions that we had throughout the audit with the folks, and so forth. So with that, I'm going to take you to the next slide, which is really the numbers for the district this year, again, in summary form. The numbers that you see on this page appear in the full audit report on page 60, so you could see in detail. So I'm just going to hit some of the highlights here. You have revenues that you estimated at about $245 million. So those are your total revenues. That includes money from the property tax levy of about $135 million, including the STAR money from New York State, and it includes, of course, your regular state aid allotment from New York State, your building aid, your foundation aid, textbook aid, excess cost aid, all that kind of stuff. And you could see that your revenues actually came in slightly better than budget. $246 million, so within $890,000 of the budget. So on $245 million, that's pretty close. On the expenditure side of the budget, what you're spending those dollars on, you originally estimated about $247 million in operating spending. That had to be revised during the year to about $253 million. There were several causes of that during the year. The primary one of which is you incurred significantly additional transportation costs than had been budgeted. You followed a recommendation in the previous year from the state controller to go and bid out your transportation contracts. You had been rolling over contracts with cost of living adjustments. The result of that and the new bids ended up costing the district an extra $3 million in transportation costs, unfortunately. So overall spending compared to the revised budget was pretty close. It was only $855 short, but again, compared to the original budget, it was about $6 million more than what you had planned to spend. In this other financing sources and uses section, you see a bunch of numbers. The bigger ones of which are this issuance premium of $2.8 million. Last year when the district issued bonding for its, the next tranche of its capital projects, I think it was about $50 million of bonding, you received about a $3.5 million premium. What that meant is the market essentially wanted to pay you more for your bonds because they thought you were a good credit risk and all those things. So they actually paid a premium when the bondholders bought those bonds. A portion of that premium had to stay with the capital projects. So you're going to, I think about $700,000 had to stay with the capital projects, and that will reduce your future borrowing authority to finish those projects. But $2.8 million, the remaining premium, came to the general fund. It's been put aside within fund balance in a debt service reserve, and that money can only be used to help pay the future debt service on those capital borrowings that the district is doing. And then you have various transfers in and out. This is money that moves between the general fund, which is the fund that I'm focused on here, but some of the other funds of the district, primarily a special aid fund where you get grant money, federal and state grant money, and you have to have some match, a local match on some of those grants. Some of the money is to the capital projects fund for more operating type capital projects. And so that's where you see transfers in and out. So what you see at the bottom of this page, and it's very key, is in the first column, you anticipated spending $6.3 million more than you were going to take in. And the way you balanced that spending plan was to use fund balance. So if you didn't do that, you would have had to increase potentially property taxes $6 million more than what you actually levied, or you would have had to have cut spending $6 million or something in between. That estimate was revised to $12 million in the second column. So you thought you might have to use $12 million of your savings account to balance your spending plan. Again, part of that driven by the unexpected increase in transportation costs, part of it driven by certain of the charter schools that you are required to fund, didn't file all their necessary paperwork with New York State, and therefore you did not get your state aid money that you were owed at this point from the state on those charter school expenditures. That those monies hopefully will come to the district somewhere down the road, but for these financial statements, we can't recognize that as revenue until the state actually forks over the money. So those were a couple of the driving forces behind why you thought you might have to use 12 million more in fund balance. What actually happened is that in the third column, you actually use 6.6 million of fund balance, that third number up from the bottom. So your fund balance did decline by 6.6 million. Compared to the plan of 12 million, you did, in the far column there, 5.6 million better than the revised plan, but still fund balance was diminished by 6.6 million. It started the year with $33 million in it, and it ended the year, as you can see, with just over 26 million in your fund balance. If you go to the next slide, what you will see is the breakdown of that 26 million, because fund balance, you can call it a savings account, but it's not just kind of in one account. The district has set aside a lot of this money for specific purposes. If you look at the first subtotal, it's in this restricted category. So 19 million of the 26 million, so about 3/4 of the money is restricted. These restrictions are all through board action in accordance with either the education law or the general municipal law of the state of New York. So education law or GML allows you to set these things aside, but only the board can actually set these monies aside. And what you see, the bigger ticket items in the restricted fund balance, $4 million, 4.2 million set aside for tax certiorari claims. Those are refunds that you have to make when usually a business files a petition to get their taxes reduced. It can be homeowners as well. But basically, you have a pot of money set aside only to be used to pay tax certiorari refunds. In the not too distant past in this district, there was no money for tax certiorari refunds, and the district had to go out and borrow money to make refunds. So you have your own source of funds set aside for that these days. I'll skip through some of the smaller ones. You do have, you see 2 lines for debt service there that combined total about $12 million. So remember I said you got a premium this year of $2.8 million. That got added into this debt service pot, along with previous monies that had been accumulated for debt service. So you had $12 million set aside, can only be used to offset future debt service principal that's due on the borrowings that the district has done primarily for capital improvements. You've actually used $3.8 million of that debt service money in balancing your 1920 spending plan. So that's 19 million of the 26 million of fund balance of your savings account. If you take all the things on my chart that I've put a 1 next to, you see in the different restricted amounts, you have this, we didn't talk about it, but the employee benefit accrued liability, retirement system contributions, unemployment, debt service, workers' comp, and then towards the bottom, the last one for subsequent year. When you add all those up, you used $5.8 million to balance your 1920 spending plan. So your spending plan anticipates you spending $5.8 million more than the revenues that are going to come into the district. If that occurs, and everything comes in on budget in 1920, expenditures and revenues, that fund balance would decline by another 5.8 million from where it currently is. So obviously the idea is to come up with expenditure savings and not spend the full budget, or have revenues come in better than you anticipate. And if that happens, the fund balance, you in other words, you have to get to $5.8 million worth of, let's say, expenditure savings, and then your fund balance would stay where it is. If you have less than 5.8 million in savings, your fund balance will go down by that amount. If you have more than 5.8 million, your fund balance would go up by that amount. That's the simple, calculus for that. So overall, what this really means is out of $26 million in fund balance, what you really have is just $6 million in what we call unassigned or free fund balance. That amount represents 2.35% of your 1920 budget. Your 1920 budget is $256 million. You are allowed under New York State law to have 4% in that in that portion of fund balance. So 4% on the 256 million would be about $10.5 million or so. So you really have about $4 million less than what you are permitted to have in that reserve. Again, that could be something that rating agencies and different places look at. Certainly, New York State has this fiscal stress monitoring test that they come out with, and certainly, you know, a declining fund balance and not having the maximum in fund balance could put you in a, you know, precarious place as regards that financial report from the state controller's office. So with that, I would just take you to the next slide. I'm almost done. The next slide is just really more informational. They make us put these numbers in the report, even though they really don't mean anything. The actuaries right now, all school districts in New York State, are on what we call a pay-as-you-go as regards health insurance. So each month you get a premium statement, you pay the premium, and you budget for that 12 payments a year, and that's what you pay. But the actuaries that the district hires have to do a calculation as to what the future value of that cost would be. They are assuming that people who start working here at age 25 will work here for 30 years and be entitled to a retirement health benefit. What is the present value of that payment 30 years from now back to today? I would ask you to speak to the actuary to define that more, but the actuaries have come up for this district that you have a $312 million liability for post-employment benefits based on your current roster of active employees, retired employees that you still have commitments to pay health insurance obligations to. They make certain assumptions about how health costs are going to go up over the next 20, 30, 40 years. So that is your present value liability. It goes somewhere else in the statement. It doesn't affect your general fund that we just went through, but it's really more informational for you to know. On the next slide, another thing that, again, is not part of the general fund, but you do contribute to the employees' retirement system and the teachers' retirement system, pension plans in New York State. And the third bullet there shows that the employees' retirement system, when it just finished its evaluation at March 31st of 2019, the New York State retirement system has a $7 billion liability. That's with a B, up from $3 billion last year. The good news is we're much better than New Jersey. So our pension system is really in pretty good shape. We are about, according to the actuaries on the ERS, we're about 96% funded, or I think Jersey is about 30% funded. So, you know, there are resources up at the state to make sure that everybody's pension is secure. But we have to report in your financial statements what your share of that $7 billion liability is. Again, it doesn't get reported in your general fund. Your share this year is $3.9 million, for what it's worth. On the TRS side, the good news is the teachers' retirement system, they have a net pension asset, according to the actuaries, of $1.8 billion, which is good news. And your share of that is $11 million, although you don't get to keep it or do anything with it. It's hopefully a way that they can help lower teacher retirement contribution rates in the future. So the next slide. Basically, as I mentioned earlier, we have to report to you from a non-financial nature any deficiencies that we find in your record keeping and report it to the board. As I said, there are 3 levels of deficiencies that we have to report on, and the lowest level is the last one, the control deficiency. That's what we've reported on to you in these financial statements. And if you go to the next slide. As I said, we did not report the 2 highest levels of deficiencies, which is good for you to know. And the only thing we did report this year as a control deficiency is the fact that your school lunch fund has run into a small deficit position of $205,000. And so that will have to be rectified going forward, whether it's additional subsidies from the general fund, changes in, you know, the rate structure and the fees that are charged for the lunch program. But, you know, this is one of the things that, you know, we would look that you cure going forward. And then lastly, my last slide, basically, just explains some of the filing requirements that have already occurred for the district this year. The education law requires that the audit report be filed with the State Education Department by October 15th. They now have a portal where all this happens electronically. And once we give you the report in PDF format, the business office, uploads that information to the portal. The Board of Education must also adopt a resolution accepting the report, and then that also has to get uploaded to the portal. They do allow a grace period if you didn't get it in by October 15th. Yours was filed on time. But they do warn that if it's not filed by November 15th, they do withhold state aid until you get it. And that actually happened in this district many, many moons ago. It hasn't happened recently. So that's good. So everything's up there, and your state aid should not be held up for any reason. And that's that. So with that, I'd be glad to take any comments or questions that anyone has on the audit report.
Trustees, do you have any questions or comments?
What would be the, so we're, the allowed unrestricted, unassigned fund balance is 10, we're at 6.
Correct.
Where's the comfort zone? Where should our comfort zone be as a school district?
Well, I mean, that's a policy statement. I will tell you that, most of the school districts that we audit, in Westchester County are at or near the 4%. Because it helps them deal with, potential any kind of emergency,
Right.
Situations, and gives them flexibility.
Correct.
To do whatever changes might need to be made programmatically or whatever. So that's what we generally say.
Okay. And did the audit committee, have you, I don't remember hearing about where we got that extra revenue from? The revenue windfall last year that we had unbudgeted, the $890,000. Do we know where that came from?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. Is that the money from the old, from the extra tax money?
Oh, maybe that's it. It's on slide 5. I was just curious about the 890,000
Yeah, it was.
of the positive revenue variance that was
Yeah,
taxes.
part of it was a combination of things. Some of it was some write-offs that the board approved during the year. There was some very old money held up on the balance sheet of the district
right.
from 15, 20 years ago. It was determined that that obligation didn't exist anymore, and when you write off that obligation, that came into the fund balance
Okay.
of the district. So that was about $1.5 million, $1.8 million or so.
Okay.
That was that.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have a very specific question about in this report. Do you have it?
Yes.
On page 54, can you just explain this page to me?
Well, this was the page that we just talked about with the OPEB on
Yeah.
the slide, which was slide. Slide 7 on the overhead. So again, this is, it's really informational. It had no effect on the general fund itself, but under Governmental Accounting Standards Board requirements, known as GASB Statement Number 75, we are required, or you are required, and we're required to make you, put this actuarial amount in your financial statements. So what the actuaries do is they come to the district and they gather information from the finance folks. They get, a roster of your active employees, your retired employees, who has single coverage, who has family coverage, retirees, what plan they're on. They see what premiums you're paying to the state health plan. So they take all that information and do whatever actuaries do. And they put this information together, and what they do is a calculation. So as I said, they're going to take a calculation of a 25-year-old teacher. What is the likelihood from an actuarial standpoint that they will spend their entire career at the school district and be entitled in year 30 to health benefits in retirement, right? Mm-hmm. So what they do is they take your premium now, they apply certain, they think, health insurance is going to go up 5% a year or whatever they do. They bring that out to year 30. Because the concept behind this is when that person gets that health benefit 30 years from now, they really earned part of it today and next year and the year after and so on. So they're saying from an accounting point of view, from an accrual accounting point of view, which is not the general fund, but elsewhere in this report, that obligation needs to be picked up annually and not waiting 30 years to reflect it in your books.
Okay.
So what this is, the actuaries taking all that information that you provide them, making the assumptions using certain discount rates. Now, because New York State, unlike the pension system where you put money into that every year and the state has, $100 billion in assets, in the teachers' system, there are no assets set aside for this. You do a pay-as-you-go, right? So you get the premium for the month, you pay it, and you're done. There's nowhere for you to put money, at least right now. The state would have to set up an irrevocable trust, allow you, just like you do with the pension, to put money in and let it be invested. So if you put some money away today, hopefully it grows, and it could help pay that person's health insurance, the district share of that 30 years from now. So that doesn't exist right now. So because you're on a pay-as-you-go basis, the actuaries have to use what's known as a discount rate, and they have to use essentially a very low discount rate. Right now, about 3.5%. The lower the discount rate, the higher the liability calculation. So that's what that is. Versus if you had money set aside, they could use a higher discount rate, come up with a lower liability. I don't know if I explained it well. You'd have to have the actuaries come in to explain it
No,
a
you
little
did. I
better than
understand.
that. But that's a present value calculation. They adjust it each year. So as assumptions change each year, discount rate assumptions, maybe they thought your premium was going to go up 7% this year and it only went up 5%. They'll adjust for that. Or if it went up 9% instead of 7%, they'll adjust to the bad for that. So that's what they do each year for the district.
All right. I understand. I was hoping the data would be useful to us, but it sounds like it is in no way whatsoever useful to us.
I'm sure the actuaries don't feel that way, but I would ask you to, call them in and speak to them about it, because they're probably one step more exciting than accountants, so.
Okay, are there any more questions or comments? Okay,
I have a
Dr. Ning.
question, and this has to do with the reduction of fund balance. So it went from 33,000 to 26 something.
Million.
33 million.
33 million to 26. And so there is a difference of 6 million. And you do explain that it's due mostly to the 3 million from transportation. Where do it come from, the other 3 million?
Well, I mean, there's a variety of factors. Some of it was from that. Some of it was you didn't get all the revenue from the state that you were supposed to get for the charter schools, because the charter schools, some of them did not file all the paperwork that they were supposed to do. Part of it was the district also spent money on repairs this year outside of the capital projects. So some of that was in there as well. So it's really a combination of those things. Plus, I would have to defer to you regarding staffing. What was staffing, in the original budget, and what did, actual staffing of personnel, be, actually was during the year, if you had to add additional personnel during the year.
Is there a way, we have those details, right, in the report? On
Well,
where-
details would not be in the report. That I would have to defer to the business office because the financials only go a certain level of detail.
Right.
It's not as detailed as your budget, per se. But the business office has it line by line,
Okay.
that information.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? No? Any? Good. Okay, thank you, Mr. Oling, for your presentation this
Thank
evening.
you very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
You too. Dr. Hamilton, do you have a report this evening?
I do. Good evening, all.
Good evening.
My report is rather brief this evening, but I'd like to just share with you that each year, the Universal Pre-K Department surveys parents on the quality of programs. And the survey results revealed that, our most recent survey revealed that parents are interested in more extracurricular family activities. So consequently, we will be hosting our first annual Small and Tall Ball in the Fall at Friendship Worship Center this Thursday from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. And the response so far has been overwhelming. We were in hopes for identifying about 75 families for this event, and we now have 187 attendees. And this event will allow families and staff to dress in their finest and enjoy an evening out. The event will be in the catering hall, and it is there will be a buffet, a photo booth, arts and craft table, and a DJ. So if you're looking for something to do on this Thursday, join us for the Small and Tall Ball in the Fall. And the next event will be our March 27th Paint and Chips event, and I'll send more information on that. We also had our first Superintendent Reading Challenge event this past Saturday. We hosted our annual holiday book fair at the Scarsdale Barnes & Noble, and the store was very busy. We had steady flow of students while I was there and even after I left. And I am proud to report that we have raised $4,000 at this event on Saturday. And I had a great time reading Ollie to a group of students who assembled there in the center of the facility. And several of our students came through and performed. And I don't know if you saw the article. There was a recent article that was shared in Cabinet this morning that Mount Vernon will be the home to some 100 families from New York City that have been or will be placed in Mount Vernon. So apparently New York City is providing rent subsidies to folks in Mount Vernon. So I've reached out to the mayor to find out more about when we can anticipate these 100 families coming and what kind of supports will New York City be offering us as we need to obviously accommodate students who will be in our community, and what will happen to these families once that subsidy runs out, which we anticipate, according to the news article, would only be for a year. So as soon as I get more information on that, I will share it with you, but it is something that is on my radar. And lastly, the Guidance Advisory Council, we need a board member trustee to serve on this committee. The next meeting is December 2nd at 1 o'clock in the Ed Center in the Student Services Conference Room. And if we could have a volunteer to serve on that committee, I would greatly appreciate it. Great job, Trustee Saunders. So Dr. Smith, Trustee Saunders is your representative for the board. And that concludes the superintendent's report this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. Next item on the agenda is our board member report, and I will just go around the table and ask trustees if there's anything they'd like to share at this time. Trustee Justino, would you like to share something?
So Mount Vernon High School had its college fair week, which 22 colleges attended. We got 340 applications submitted, which did better than last year's 303 applications. And there's one more day, which is December 2nd, and we have 8 colleges coming, and overall kids are engaged. It was very significant. Everybody loved it, and it was useful. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for that very positive and encouraging report. Trustee Munoz Patterson.
So today we met actually for one of our planning sessions for our holiday event. And so everyone knows our holiday event it's going to be December 14th. From 3 to 7 at Rebecca Turner. It's going to be fantastic. Everybody should come. It's going to be, I think I said last meeting, but we're going to have arts and crafts and singing and caroling and hot cocoa and cider, and we really hope that everyone can join us. Again, December 14th, I should see everyone with their phones out putting this in their calendar.
So trustee, how can trustees gathered around the table help?
Oh, I have a list.
Okay.
I will prepare it and send it out.
Okay, good. Thank you. Trustee Ning?
Okay, the Education Committee met on October 30th. I believe we had a meeting last time, but I was not here. I was traveling for a conference. So, and there was a presentation on technology and cybersecurity. So, one of the reason why we wanted to find out, how protected we are against these ransom viruses and attacks to districts. You've probably heard in the news that some districts, get to be, they get attacked and right. They held hostage, and they have to pay ransom in order for them to release some of the information that they take. So, and we wanted to know, what is the district doing, to protect data and to protect the district. And I think we did get a pretty good presentation, around, how protected we are, even though it's almost impossible, to protect ourselves, 100%. But there is, a pretty good deal of protection, in cybersecurity, short-term and long-term. We learn of terms like spear phishing, reuk, defray, and we learn of how they attack healthcare, entities, financial entities, the military, and in fact, education is like the fourth target, after those entities. Healthcare is number one targeted entity. Then you have the financial, the banks, and then the military, and then education. So we did ask at some point, for a presentation to be done to the board. There are information that will not be, I would say, disclosed because of security reasons. But however, I think Mr. McGrath did a pretty good job of, identifying the issues and how we get protected. And I think we would like him to come at some point and do a presentation to the board, to the public, to show the levels of securities, that we have here at the district. So.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nang. Trustee-
Our next meeting, I'm sorry,
sorry.
was supposed to be tomorrow, but
Right.
I think we'll have to reschedule for another day. You said December 4th, but it may probably be in the evening, if we can talk about that and, change the time somehow. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nang. Trustee Miller?
Would you like me to do my committee report now, just roll it all in?
I think so. So we have two items on our agenda. We have board member reports, which is an opportunity for board members to talk about activities that they've engaged in and just general information they want to share with the public about their participation in the district's events. And we also have committee reports. And so for today, I think it's fine if we just combine the two, and since we've already started. So you can either give your committee report or you can share. And just to indicate which committees are due to report today, there is the strategic planning, student activities, health, wellness, and special ed. So yes, please, proceed.
Okay, so I wanted to add one thing for the trustees' calendar, if you haven't put it in yet. May 16th, 2020 is our Mind, Body, and Soul event. And once we get through, the Family and Community Engagement Committee gets through this holiday event on December 14th, we'll be focusing on that event. And I definitely will be looking for volunteers for help for that event. The strategy committee met for the first time today, and we had a very productive conversation. We're talking about focusing on achievement, measurement, and basically efficacy of programs. We realized as we got into the discussion, which is about an hour long, that we really need to, our baseline has to be data and grabbing the data. So that will be our first step, and then setting goals, looking at our competitive set and where we want to be in 3 years. So moving incrementally in those 3 years. And I think Dr. Hamilton used the expression, design success. So design how we're going to get there. But it became pretty apparent that we really need the board to affirm the three key areas that we agreed to at our retreat. And Trustee McOwen shared that his notes and summarized the points that we agreed to at that meeting. And I think might be useful if we could try to wrap that up in the not too distant future so that we can move forward with the strategy planning. And maybe we could discuss it tonight in the roundtable.
Yes.
I don't know, it's a possibility. So we really have to have agreement on that, and then we will be following and reporting on that and talking about how we're going to measure and where we're setting our sights. We're also looking at, high yield programs that we're doing. We have a lot of programs and a lot of initiatives in the district, and we have to evaluate all of them to make sure that they're all high yield, even if they're high cost. We want to have a high yield. If we have high cost as low yield, those are programs that we need to discontinue. So it's kind of an opportunity for us to take stock and say, how are we helping our students achieve, and what are the most efficacious ways of doing that? So I think once we have an agreement from the board on the strategic objectives, the three big ones. We know we have parking lot, but once we have an agreement on that, then we will schedule our next meeting for right after the first of the year.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. Trustee McOwen, would you like to give a report?
I just had a question related to policy for I guess the superintendent and Dr. Silver and others. Now that we have we put in place the policy about the naming of the schools and reaffirmed naming of all the schools, I notice for today, for example, in the change orders, we still refer to as A.B. Davis in the change orders with the state, and I'm wondering what is the proper process to finalize the paperwork so that the names of the schools match up everywhere, including with SED.
If I recall correctly, that particular, and correct me if I'm not accurate, Mr. Silva or Mr. Policio, that change order is actually a late submission, and that change order was actually done when it was the A.B. Davis site. Is that correct?
What change order are you referring to? Maybe before it was steam.
Before it was STEAM,
Yeah.
yes, I'm sorry.
Before it was steam.
Yes.
This is an old change order.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why it's an old change order that they just submitted, but when the work was done, it was A.B. Davis, so the change order has to match the name of the school at that time.
Yeah, no, I understand. That's fine. But so that transition has been notified? Does the state know what the current name of the school is?
Dr. Bennett Conroy deals with the names of the schools.
Yeah.
I believe that's all up to date.
They're all registered under the current name.
Okay, thanks. And has any communication gone out yet to the principals about the new policy? Yeah.
I believe that policy was distributed,
Yeah, it was, and it's on slated for your principal meeting.
and it's
Oh,
on
great.
for our meeting is tomorrow? Thursday.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee McOwen. Trustee Williams?
I'd like to share a meeting that had taken place with myself and a representative from the City of Mount Vernon, Mr. Shane Brooks. We met with the Metropolitan Golf Association in Elmsford on November 14th and sat with some executives there and had conversations about bringing golf collaboratively to our school district and to our city. And it was a really good meeting, and we talked about, kind of snowballing it. And, so right now where we are between the city and the school district, and we'll obviously have to continue the conversation with Dr. Gorman, student activities, and figure out exactly the best ways to include it into our city. We talked about the core values of it. Me, myself, just actually getting the golf bug recently. I just realized the tremendous value that it has, and really want to share it with our students. And so there's a couple of different programs that the MGA is interested in providing and helping us kind of include it into our city. One being a First Tee program, which is a program that actually, it's a couple different ways you can go at it. After school, in school. And, we are, this program actually comes to the city. They provide transportation for a group of students, within a certain age limit, and actually takes them, provides transportation is at very little cost, and actually takes them and gives them the hands-on experience to the golf course. And they also have internships where they actually show and explain and kind of, walk the students through the different career paths that are that go along with the game. So I'm pretty excited about that, and we'll continue that conversation. There's another meeting scheduled, I believe, for December 10th. Hopefully, Dr. Gorman can attend. If not, we'll be able to bring it back. And this is something that we're actually kind of planning for next year, early spring. But I'm really excited about that, to bring that to you guys' attention. I was also able to visit Benjamin Turner Middle School, where I also have my daughter actually goes there, so it's always doing double duty. And obviously Benjamin Turner has every school has a different set of social issues, and something that really stood out to me is just the diversity of different students coming from different schools, different social emotional backgrounds. And one thing that I took away from that is a anti-bullying initiative that I'm not sure that we are really looking at it through the correct lens. So talking to the staff and leadership there, and so we're excited. We're having good conversations about spearheading some initiatives to make sure that we are providing the correct support to the students on both sides of this bullying thing.
Great.
So that's so that's also the school visit was also, and I recommend that we really get to these schools, because our eyes are kind of really detailed with certain things. So
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Saunders?
I have a special education advisory meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, at Home School, and the topic would be strategies to support your child at home. The meeting's from 6 to 7:30. Also, I had a meeting with Dr. BC and some people from WJCS. WJCS had programs at Williams and Hamilton School. I think they ended last year. For some reason or another, but they wanted to come back into the school district, and Dr. BC was explained how we want rigor and high yield education, and we have Power Hour now, and how our children have excelled. So they're going to go back to the drawing board and see what they can do to improve their programs and come back with us with some ideas. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Trustee Saunders. And I just want to add one small thing. I want to remind everyone that the pool is now open again, and it's open 3 days of the week. It's a wonderful way to exercise, to de-stress, to disconnect, to just share some valuable time with your children and family. So I just want to invite everyone to seek that opportunity and take advantage. It's a wonderful, wonderful time spent there. So I invite everyone and welcome everyone to find the time to de-stress and disconnect and just enjoy. So that concludes our board member under.
What are the hours of the pool?
Okay, so the pool is open on Tuesday and Thursday evenings from 6 to 9, and it's open on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's open swim, and there's lap swimming, and there's also a portion of the pool that's dedicated for children. You can have moms and dads, children with their children in the pool together, and it just is a wonderful time, I think. So I just wanted to remind everybody that that opportunity exists, and please come out. It is a valuable benefit for all of us. So that concludes our committee and/or board member reports for the evening. Right now, again, and I apologize, we have a change in our agenda. We are going to go into executive session, and Mr. McCormick will tell us why, and we'll tell you how much time we need.
We need an executive, motion for executive session to discuss third-party contract negotiations, the employment history of a particular person or persons, and receive advice from legal counsel.
Okay, motion?
Motion?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion carries.
How long?
What we need.
This, this will probably be at least an hour.
Okay.
Okay,
We may need two.
let's go.
It might be two.
Review the resolutions. The next item is item 7, the human resources resolutions. Can I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Are there any comments, questions, or discussions
Is
related to?
that 7 or 6?
Six, Arlene.
It's all-
No, I'm sorry.
The reorder?
It is, it was 6. It's been reordered to 7 because you guys went to executive session.
So we have to
early.
refresh, okay.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
that's the only thing that changed. I just put executive session at the
Yeah.
top.
Okay,
I just
got it.
refreshed,
Thank you.
so-
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second.
Second, right. Do we have any comments, questions, or discussions related to the human resources resolutions?
I don't.
Do you have, no? Okay, no. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the business office resolutions. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion?
Second? Are there any comments, questions, or discussions related to this resolution, to this memorandum? The business office memorandum? Any of the items on there?
Not tonight.
Not tonight? Okay. Hearing none, no questions or comments. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item number 9, the resolutions for school improvement. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Any comments, questions, or discussion?
Yes, I have a question
Okay,
about one of the contracts under 9.1.
okay.
The. It's not there anymore. Did it change?
Which one?
No, you're talking about the contract you asked me about?
Yes.
That's going to be under special, where was that?
Student services, number 10.
Oh, I'm sorry, because the numbers changed.
Yep.
I have it in my notes. I apologize. I don't have any questions about items in 9.
Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments? No? Hearing no questions? All in favor?
I
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is item 10, student services. Can I have a motion to approve the
Motion.
resolutions? Second? Okay.
Second.
Any questions, comments, discussion?
Yes, I have a
Okay,
question
Trustee
about.
McGowan? Go ahead.
Can we just get clarification on the JD Andrus contract? And is that an actual amount, and if so, for how many students, and what services does this organization provide to the district?
Dr. Gaon?
Thank
Sure.
you.
So we currently have 4 students at Andrus, and typically.
Is that a
this-
school?
It's a school.
Okay.
So there are 4 students. It's a school for students with emotional and dysregulations, pretty much. 2 of our students that are there have one-to-one teacher aides, so that's an additional cost. And so with the 4 students and the services that they get, that's the cost of the programs.
Wow. A lot.
Okay. And the contract itself, I assume, will be completed, because the one that's attached here is blank. The contract attached to the resolution doesn't have anybody's names filled in or dollar amounts or anything. It's all just blank.
Right, I'm not sure why it was left like that, but there are.
There's a signature on it, but the top part,
It's not been filled out. Right?
correct. It's pending president's signature, but the top part, well, the date is actually correct, Micah? I'm sorry, Trustee McOwen?
If I can add, so typically Schedule A is
Yeah.
what lists the students and their identifications. At the time the contract was drafted, the names hadn't been finalized yet. So to your point, yes, it will be updated to reflect the schedule with the current students as we have them, and consistent with the cost.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is item number 11, the resolutions for buildings and grounds. And today, we're not going to have an explanation of all of the change orders. You received at your desk a summary of the change orders that are part of this resolution. But we will ask Mr. Michael Policio to just approach the podium and just explain the one resolution that we discussed, the large resolution. I mean, the change order with the large sum. That's the only one that I wanted you to explain.
Good evening, everyone. So the change order for the large sum, the 122,000, that's the gable we've been talking about at Mandela. So it's broken up into three portions. One is the actual shoring and the bracing. That's 122,000. The next portion of it will be the demolition of it, and that is also listed there at 82,000. And then the reconstruction, we do not have a price on it yet.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any more questions?
Yes.
Trustee Miller, Munoz.
It's okay. I'm going to start talking. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Question, I'm sorry. Can we go back to the 122 and the 21 above that? Is the 21 above that related to the 122? The lintel for the 12-inch thick masonry wall?
No.
Okay,
It
so
has-
that's separate.
Yes,
And the
that is-
82 in the comments and the TBD
So
is
the
not included in the
TBD
122.
on the reconstruction, because we just don't have that yet. We don't have that price yet.
Okay, so
But it's going to be a lot more than both of those numbers combined.
It'll be more than that. I don't know if it's going to be a lot more, but it will be more than that.
but the 82 is not part of the 122?
It is not part
So
of
it's
one.
200,000.
200,000. If you look on the other sheet that I have, that I gave you guys, the explanation, it shows the numbers, the estimates, where we are with it, and at the bottom, it tells you how much of the contingency we've used. We've used 6.6% of the contingency with a 3.4 balance. So the only number that's not in those numbers is the number that we haven't gotten yet.
All right, so the 82 is included in this number, and we're only at 6.6.
Right.
The 122 and the 82.
Yes, I believe that is correct. I'm not 100% sure on the 82. I had the person here with me, but he had to go because of the change in the schedule. I will check on the 82. I think it is in the gable number, but I will check and verify with that.
Well, do we want to?
Okay. Are there any
It
more?
is clearly in the estimate that we have on this piece of paper. So it's on this piece of paper, it's accounted for. We don't and that's only because it's at the estimate stage for the final portion of the reconstruction of the gable. So at the end of the gable, we estimate that will be around 6.6%.
I don't think the gable is, not the gable, the 82 is on here,
I think it's
because it
part.
says demo and reconstruction pending.
Yeah, I think it's part of the 425, that whole number in the negotiations. So I will check it tomorrow, and I will get back to Dr. Hamilton.
Do we want to vote on this when we don't have all the information, though? I mean, I don't know. Just a question.
Can wait until
we can-
Friday.
Yeah. I mean, I'd just like to
The
have.
122 is clear. That's the only change order. That's the
82
only
is
thing you're
not-
voting
The
on.
82 is not even in the change orders right now.
That's
Right,
not-
so
that
we're
was
just
just
voting on the
additional
one. So we're just
information.
voting on the ones that you didn't need to discuss because they weren't large in the
Right.
122.
Right. Unless you have questions, I mean, you're always free to ask.
Where,
We'll wait to see what comes next.
Okay.
where do we stand at overall, Mike, with the exterior work at Mandela? Is the stairwell done?
No.
No.
No, the stairwell construction is underway, but it's not complete.
Okay.
That's part of the contract, though.
Right.
Without,
And the roof, the re-bricking of the roof?
Yeah, so that's what this, all the parapet gables, this should be the end of what we know today. I was told to do that. Will be what, and, barring any further change orders.
Well, obviously, that's what I'm getting at. So, I mean, in terms of is the demolition part done?
Yes, the demolition is done and the reconstruction outside of the gable. That's the only thing, because we had to shore the gable up, but the
Yeah.
parapet walls have been completely demolished and
Okay,
rebuilt.
so if all the demo work is done, then theoretically, we shouldn't be finding any more major problems with the building.
Theoretically.
I know.
I was just going to say, I think I've heard that before, too.
I know.
Okay.
I had a question about a different change order.
Yes.
83, the experimental theater door. What's the story with that?
So that was done a while ago. That's just a change order that was left out there. It appeared on this, it was verified that the work was completed. That was done when the construction of Thornton was done, and it just wasn't paid up till now.
Why was it not paid until now?
I do not know the answer to that.
I will not vote on this without knowing that answer, just speaking personally. When was this work done?
Before the experimental theater was complete. The experimental theater is complete. It was.
But wasn't that in like 2017?
No, it was at.
What was
No,
this?
it was more recent.
That was
It was
last
a-
fall, last spring. wasn't
Last
it?
spring.
So a year and a
yeah.
half ago?
No, the spring of
No, spring of this.
19.
the spring of this year.
Spring of 19.
Yeah.
Yeah, last spring.
Yeah.
Okay, can we, which is that under 11.1 or 11.2? I
That
can't.
is
11-2, I think.
11-2.
Yeah.
Sorry, bear with me. I just want to see the attachments here. Ugh. This software.
Hold on.
Yeah.
It's 11-2.
Additional note.
83, right? That's 83?
4. It's 84. Oh, no, you're 83.
No,
You're right. I'm
83.
sorry, it is 83, but it's still true. 11-2.
83. Let me see if I have additional notes on it.
Was submitted to the district September 4th. This is a NYREM bill. September 17th. Wait, am I looking at the right thing?
So when we were constructing, I can tell you the specifics of it. The only thing I can't tell you is why it was held till today. But I can tell you the specifics of it and the fact that it was completed. It was an opening that we needed to brace with a 16-inch concrete masonry wall. We completed the work to open the theater. Now, a lot happened in the summer when we were struggling to open that building. Again, I will check with Savin and PGA to see why it delayed. There must be an explanation why it delayed to come onto this agenda. But the work was complete, verified, signed off by Ken Baviello, the architect, the Savin Engineering. So all the work was complete and it was signed off.
Yep, no, I get it. I see the pictures. The work was definitely completed, and it went through all the channels. But if the reason we didn't pay it is because they took 6 months to bill it, we cannot tolerate that practice from our contractors. It's unacceptable. So I would want to know why it was delayed so long.
Sure enough.
That's my opinion on that.
Yeah. So because this resolution has multiple change orders on it,
I can fix that. Just give me 1 second.
okay.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear. It's approved NYREM change order 82 and 83?
No, just 83.
83, okay.
83.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to strike through the text on on board docs.
And I also had a question about the retention pond at. Wait, that's at the high school?
At the high school field, yes.
To eliminate flooding. What is the flooding issue? I didn't
So
know that was
the-
a flooding issue.
When we did grading, it created a flood issue on Hillcrest Avenue.
The new grading for the new fields.
The new grading for the new field,
Yeah.
because the position of that softball field.
Sure.
Created a flood issue 2 times on the Hillcrest Avenue. So in order to prevent it from happening again, we had to do the retention.
Yeah, I understand. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so we're pulling out the change order.
So if everybody refreshes, you'll see that the text for number 83 has been struck through. I'll be sure to make the note to Pam and the business office in the morning that it was not approved tonight.
Okay, so do we need a motion to table that change order?
No, we don't, I took it off.
You just took it off? Okay, all right. Do you have any more questions or comments about these resolutions or change orders? While Michael is Mr. Palicio is at the podium. Does anyone have any more comments or questions? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item number 12, Superintendent's Resolution. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Any comments, questions, discussion?
Are these, I just want to be clear, are these items we discussed in executive session previous meetings?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so.
Yes. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes for the meeting of October 1st, 2019. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Any questions, comments, corrections, edits? None? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is our roundtable. And for our roundtable discussion, we've decided to continue on our conversations regarding strategic planning. And this afternoon, the Strategic Planning Committee had a meeting, and Darcy reported some information related to that. And I'd like to pick up that conversation and also use this opportunity to continue talking about some of the retreat discussions that we had. I don't know whether the 20 minutes will allow for that, but we'll start the discussion. And we're going to continue to use this time to continue the work that we began at our retreat. So, and I'm sorry I said Darcy, Trustee Miller.
Wow, I'm really offended, I'm telling you.
Okay.
Well, I mean, my first question is, did all the trustees read the summary that Trustee McOwen provided via our email last week? Yes, no?
Yes.
I read it.
I read it.
Yeah, I read it too. So, but do we think that accurately portrayed what we discussed?
Yes, I think so.
Do you agree?
Yes.
You agree?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, the next step for us is to, I think, look at what we have there in terms of the top 3 goals and either affirm that those are the ones we're going to pursue or not. And if those are the ones we're going to pursue, we can affirm those, and then we can take the stuff that we did put in the parking lot and I guess have another opportunity to discuss those items and maybe, discuss prioritizing the parking lot items. But I think we all agreed at the meeting that we don't have the bandwidth or the time to focus on more than the big 3, because those are very large areas. They're what it's all about. It's about achievement, it's about measurement, and it's about fiscal responsibility and how do we afford all the stuff that we need to do to make our students successful. So I don't know what the next step is. Does anyone want to discuss those 3? Micah, would you like to reiterate for Trustee Saunders' edification what those 3 areas were? Did you find it? Okay.
I got to find my own email.
Oh, that's.
If I may, trustees, once the board reaches consensus on that, I would like to ask the board to formally adopt those goals so that,
Exactly.
1, they're a matter of public record, and 2, that it becomes formalized, so regardless to who's on this group or who's in the superintendent's office, we'll continue the work, unified work around these 3 initiatives.
From what I remember about the student achievement goals, I know that we had the general concepts down. I think the issue was that we were discussing the actual numbers in place. So the actual increases that we were looking for, or the actual dates that we were looking to have them done by. And I think the only person who can do that would be you, senor.
Sí.
Qué bueno. So if we could, I think I'm comfortable saying for the elementary school indicator, the middle school indicator, and the high school indicator, saying, you know what, I think you need to take a run at that ultimately for us to even remotely be able to say,
Oh, thank you. It's very helpful.
yes, it's, something we're good with, or no, we're not. I think probably we should take a run at the other 2 areas and look at those. And maybe starting from the back, so maybe starting with budget and working our way up would be a good, because I think we're all pretty much on the same page with the fact that we need to be, fiscal stewards and whatnot.
I'll just say for the record and for the benefit of the public, so we had our retreat where we talked openly about the future goals for the district. And it was a great discussion. It's a continuation of the last 2 retreats we've had in trying to be specific and put down, now that we've achieved so much with our 2020 goal and we're about to enter 2020, what does it look like beyond 2020? And after several rounds, we have, as was mentioned, narrowed it down to 3 categories of goals, which this is what we're talking about, is trying to put them down into more specific wording. The 3 general categories are student achievement, specifically goals having to do with measurable success in student achievement and how we, and trying to be very specific about our goals as a district for what that looks like, and whether it be test scores or other measurable factors. The second one was focusing very specifically on the high schools, and how we help continue to specialize them and help students at each of the 3 high schools succeed, and how we can treat the high schools in an equitable way, but also in a way that recognizes the unique vision that we have implemented. And the third goal category is budgetary, and specifically having a long-term budget plan. And I think that, anyway, that's a summary of the 3 categories, and so now that's what we're talking about is, and we have circulated just among ourselves a draft of kind of fleshing those out, and the next step would be to formalize that. So what is the right, speaking to now to us, the board, what is the most efficient way to get this done? Is it to have another retreat? Is it to plan at the next meeting, for example, to give us 45 minutes or something at the end of the meeting to just hash it out? Or I don't know what the right way to go about this would
My
be.
recollection from our retreat was that Dr. Hamilton was going to get back to us by the first of the year with his recommendations for what those benchmarks were going to be. And so that was, I think we were talking about 3 years, so maybe, 2021, 2022, 2023. And I think that was at the first of the year. I mean, if we need it sooner, we could do that sooner.
Well, I think what I would like to see happen is us agree on basically all of the wording of all of the goals, everything except the blank for like what is the
Okay,
right
so
number
the
to fill
number,
in.
right, okay.
But I think we can agree on everything else anytime we want to.
We should be able to agree on the wording
We should agree.
the next meeting.
Yeah, I think
mean,
so.
So we just need to scribe them up and agree on them.
I mean,
Yeah.
they're pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty.
Maggie did a fantastic job. Sorry,
Yeah.
Trustee McOwen
Oh, thank
did a
you.
fantastic job. So like that's what I was saying in terms of the student achievement goals. If you look at the key elementary school indicator, the key middle school indicator, the key
Right.
high school indicator, the reality is that's exactly what we said in the meeting. The only thing that's missing, as we were just having a conversation, is that I think the only one qualified really at this table to come up with any type of numbers would be Superintendent Hamilton, and it would have to be him that would have to come back to us and say, hey, listen, in this blank, I think this number is achievable. In this blank, I think that number is achievable. Because I don't think, I mean, I've reread them now 3 times, and
Yeah.
I don't really see any out of A, B, and C, I don't see any issues unless somebody else does. So maybe we could just put those to bed and then up until we get the numbers and we can look at them again and revisit it. But we can put that to bed and look at the next
Yeah.
section.
No, some of them are very fleshed out, but some of them are not. Like one of the things is, should we have some kind of measurable goal about special education achievement, right? Right. And the question is, what does that look like? I don't know what that looks like. Another thing that we talked about but never really fleshed out in the second category about the high schools is, and tracking the whole, tracking student progress is how do we implement in words our shared desire to look at social emotional wellness, which we've all said is an important factor, but not one that lends itself to, numbers so well. But we recognize as a board, and we've talked about this in our retreats, that it's an important thing that we need to make sure that we account for. So I'm looking for suggestions on how to address that as a goal. That's something that isn't really fleshed out.
So maybe the correct way to approach it would be to say, you know what, like for section 1, elementary, middle, high school, we're going to kick that back to the superintendent, and he's going to take a run at that and D for the key special education indicators, maybe those, so we'd have to take a run at that. We'd have to take a run at 2B, which is the social and
Right,
emotional.
yeah.
And then we'd have to take a run at, under fiscal, controlling expenses. And we could take a run at that ourselves, and then we can,
Yeah.
focus on for like.
I mean, do we want to it makes it like, can the special education committee just put some kind of thought into what that goal should look like for how do we measure and monitor and make sure that we're improving our special education students? And then maybe budget committee can talk about the controlling expenses goal and what that should look like.
Maybe individualized attention, that should be the education committee?
Is that managing for results, that MFR?
No, actually, that was, we had talked about, during the retreat, we had talked about creating an individualized plan
For each student.
which is in fact connected to the MRF.
Yeah.
As one of the strategies that's used for moving the needle. So yes, in essence, yes.
I mean, I think the goal that we have here is 2A. That's aimed at the MFR
Yeah.
style, recognizing that eventually we want that kind of data to be able to track not just, because what does MFR currently cover? Is it just middle school or high school or which grades?
MFR?
Yeah.
K through 8.
It is everybody.
K through 12, I'm sorry.
It is everybody.
Yes.
Okay.
Identified students, all right, I mean.
Right.
Right, who are in the lower categories in terms of their achievement against the tests. I mean, I think, and out of all of this, the main thing that I think we need to develop, and I think that probably falls to, I don't know, Dr. Hamilton and maybe finance and someone who's really good at data management, but we need a dashboard. We need something we can look at that shows very clearly where we are, at a given point during the year.
Yeah, well, I think the other aspect of this, which, and again, we can talk about the wording, but one of the things I put in here was the concept of subject, of course, to privacy laws and all of that. Is there a way we can improve how student progress is not only tracked internally, but also made available to parents and the students so they can see how they're doing and what they're doing and how, if they change schools in the middle of the year or when they go from 8th grade into 9th grade, whatever the transition is, do they have a consistent way of knowing if they're on track, And a lot of this is just kind of, we're talking about things that already Dr. Gorman and others have made great strides towards, right? Things like having a course catalog and things like checking how, the distribution of classes among different schools.
One of the things we may want to consider as I listen to Trustee McGowan talk is maybe designating a portion of an upcoming meeting that may have a otherwise short agenda, a committee as a whole meeting, so that members of all the committees will be able to participate in flushing this out.
Yeah.
And it may just may be a more efficient way to accomplish what Trustee is talking about.
Yeah. I'm also mindful that the longer this becomes, the less helpful it is. I mean, it has to be a certain level of detail so we have goals that we can measure and make sure we can check against. But it also, this is not going to be 6 pages long. That does not serve anybody's purpose. I kind of think what I did is already too long. But okay, thanks. But
We can probably winnow it down.
if we can edit it and make it more useful.
Well, the reality is, I think it's a page. I mean, once you take
It's a page.
Once you take the front
Yeah.
part out,
Yeah, it's a page.
and then you take the vision in 2020, which we don't really need on here for our goals. It's a page. We're totally good with
Yeah.
length.
Yep.
Okay, so what's the follow-up here then? And timing?
So what are the next steps? So I think we should continue this conversation, and I think we should, so there are assignments here for separate committees, but the committee should come back with recommendations for these goals related either to special ed or to our budgetary goals. But during the next roundtable, we should continue to finalize this, and let's get this done. Let's set up a time for this. When do we want to have these goals ready? I mean, 2020 is just, a couple weeks away at this point. Do we want to?
First meeting in January.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
I'd love to have this adopted.
First
at the
meeting in
first-
January,
That's what I'm thinking.
let's go.
Okay.
So if people can, is it 2 or 3 specific things we're follow up on? The 3 specific things?
Special ed and the budget
budget.
committee.
Yeah.
So if we could,
Well,
mean-
there's one more.
And
that's
social,
in-
emotional.
Social,
wellness is
emotional.
another one,
Yeah.
so.
Can we ask for a discussion on that at
Next
the
meeting?
December 10th meeting?
Yeah.
And then we'll be ready to
Sure.
go firm by the January, whatever that first meeting is in January, by that meeting.
Okay.
And Dr. Hamilton, I mean, I'd love your, I mean, these are the board goals, obviously, but I'd love your feedback too, if you,
Sure.
maybe if there's better terminology or, you know, any edits you would suggest, I'd love, if you, I'm happy to be the master of the document, so if you want to send any comments to me, I can incorporate everybody's changes.
Do we have any policies when it comes to the goal of the revenue generating opportunities? Do we have any policies that you're aware of that would prevent us from generating revenue from whether it's our facilities or what have you? I'm not talking about the foundation, but I'm talking about, you know, like, are we actively renting our pool out? Do we actively, you know, if we
Charging admission for use
charge,
of.
well, no,
fitness
charging, like going out and marketing the pool as an asset to other school districts that
Yeah.
don't have a pool. You know, are we free and clear to do that? What would happen if, let's say, we wanted to open up a few seats in our specialized high schools to students from out of district who want to pay tuition in to come to the Performing Arts High School, let's say, which would be revenue to us.
Well, we do this all the time, in renting Thornton, for example, to do a performing arts thing.
So we can do this.
Yeah, I mean, subject to any advice Cliff has as board counsel, I mean, yes, we can.
So that's, so,
we can
so,
rent
you know,
for
I'll also
facilities.
take a little bit of a crack then at a revenue generating plan.
I wasn't saying yes, we can. I'm saying yes, I have to give an opinion.
Well, can you give us an opinion on December 10th? Please, thank you. So I'll take a
Does not
crack
have
at
to
the
be
revenue
detailed,
generating.
just-
No, just yes or no, a simple yes or no.
Yes.
Correct.
And,
and I-
but you, so you understand the kind of things that we're talking about?
Yes.
It's a broad range, but I mean, I think they're really worth, and one of the things we talked about in our strategic planning meeting was the fact that we are going to need to do with where we're going, we're going to need to do a branding effort. I mean,
Yes.
it's amazing how many people in the district don't even understand that we have 3 high schools now. They're like, oh, you have 3 high schools now? And so if we're ever going to attract people to maybe pay tuition, just a small number of seats, because our students are obviously a priority, but to pay to come to our schools, we need to have a branding effort. And to that end, are we going to be voting on what we're doing about that?
Say that again, your last
PR
part.
and branding and like how we're going to,
If that's part of my reorg plan.
Okay.
that I want to share with the board. And actually, I guess that really needs to be ready by the December 10th.
right, because don't we
current,
have, end of the year.
ends December 31st, so. Yeah.
So as part of that, I mean, well, after you decide that, you recommend that, then we need to just really have a branding campaign. And because if you want to generate revenue, you have to go out and promote the opportunities. So I think that's an initiative that we can take a crack at also. I just wanted to make sure policy-wise we could do.
I wanted to follow up on a comment that Micah made, especially with regard to input that Dr. Hamilton can provide, because you are not only our pedagogical expert here, but you have I think, a more finely acute sense of what the priorities are. And while we all have these goals that we want to pursue, I also ask that you think about goals that maybe, I don't know, that need to be included or incorporated, or so.
Well, I
Just
was
want you to think about that and provide some insight as well.
Absolutely, and I was just looking over the charts paper from the retreat, actually, and I think it is pretty well captured, and I'm very comfortable that I think all the voices were heard on this. I will flush it out and help Trustee McOwen wordsmith it some more, but I think it captures where we are and where we ought to be, and its alignment with the district vision, which, by the way, I think we should really get into the habit of paying more attention to, and maybe even putting it at the top of our meetings to remind us of the big picture, where we're headed, and how these goals are connected to that vision statement.
Sure.
That's a great suggestion.
Dr. Ning, did you want to share some comments or thoughts on?
Not at this point.
Okay, thank you.
I will.
Okay, great. Okay, so we are wrapping up now. We're coming to the end of our roundtable. So we'll, again, continue this discussion. This is an organic discussion, and even after we have our goals finalized, that doesn't mean they're said and done, and we'll articulate them and adopt them, but then that means we've got to start implementing them and doing the work that's involved to actually make the goals a reality. And that's not going to happen in one meeting or two or in a couple of months, but just like Dr. Hamilton said, it's something that we want to implement so that it survives, all of our tenure on the board.
Madam President, I just want to, I don't want to lose what we talked about last roundtable about pressing Albany for more money, and where does that stand? Can we just get just an update on where that stands and how we can help?
I had a conference call with the current acting commissioner, and we also had a prep call with the representative from the Big Five. We are scheduled to go to Albany and plead our case on sometime in December, early December. Mr. Silver, do you have that date ready? So I'm up to December 13th. So we actually have an opportunity to have personal audience with the Finance Committee with the intent of trying to influence the governor's planning session. So I will share, once we have our speech outlined, if you will, our points that we want to make, which is part of why I shared with you tonight at your place. I'm glad you gave me the segue too. I almost forgot it. I shared this county data with you because now what we are doing is looking at Mount Vernon's data in comparison to the county data, specifically about characteristics of students that reside in our community and students that we educate, to demonstrate to the Budget and Finance Committee in Albany what makes Mount Vernon very unique. One of the challenges I have, and I expressed this on our prep call, is I'm sure every superintendent will be able to articulate the uniqueness, the unique features of their district. But even in that conversation, there was further confirmation about some of the circumstances that I think warrants reconsideration for how aid is determined in Mount Vernon and how the formula needs to be updated. So once we have this analysis, which we talked about this morning in Cabinet, I'll be able to fine tune my speaking points, and I'll share that with the board in terms of how we are preparing for December 11th is our meeting in Albany. I'll be able to share with the board what I intend to press upon the Budget and Finance Committee.
That's great, but how can we help?
Melissa has a.
Yeah, Melissa.
So December 5th, there's actually a NISBA event, and I think I'd mentioned I don't know if I mentioned during the last meeting, but I definitely mentioned it during our retreat, that Ossining was very successful in having a social media campaign and very successful in getting attention. And they are actually one of the two individuals running it is their superintendent. So that's December 5th. We're going to go up to Valhalla. So I think everyone who can come should come, because I think it's going to be really great to get a game plan together kind of, and to see where we can, how we can support and how we can help and how we can help you guys going forward, kind of pushing it where we are.
But that's a meeting. I don't understand. It's a meeting with whom?
It's
New York State School Board Association.
It's actually the Westchester Putnam School Board Association.
Sorry.
Thank you, Melissa.
I
Thank you,
lied.
Trustee Munoz. I was just about to mention that. It's a program that they're offering. It's called Advocacy 101.
Got
and it's
it.
for board
Got it.
members and superintendents. It's going to be held in the evening from 6:30 to 9 p.m. at the Southern Westchester BOCES Career Services, and
7 o'clock, you said?
6:30 to 9 p.m. So it's in the evening. Thursday, December 5th.
I think it says Valhalla. I don't think it's on
No, it's
Marinick Ave.
it's in 65 Grasslands Road, Valhalla, and Mr. McCormick can register you for it if you're interested. I believe I forwarded that email to everyone, so you have that information as well, but I can always resend it. But I thank you, Trustee Munoz. That was on my next item I wanted to bring, because I think it'll be valuable for us as we continue that discussion, because you're right, we need to continue that. And we need to be able to support our superintendent and promote our district's needs, so.
Fifth.
December 5th, Thursday, December 5th, from 6:30 to 9 p.m. So
Okay.
hopefully many of us will be able to attend.
Okay.
Okay, so that concludes our roundtable. We'll continue our discussions, as I said before. I'd like to thank everybody for attending the meeting this evening. I'd like to thank all of the trustees for your engagement and participation, and I would like a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Good night. Thank you, everyone, for
Thank
your
you.
participation this evening.